Cool. Well, Pixies, thanks so much for coming in to speak to us today. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room is really glad that you set time aside to come in and do this with us. You're very welcome. Pleasure on us. So this is your first show in Dublin in 2 years now, isn't it? Since 2017? Don't remember. Busy schedule. So we might just jump right into it. So you guys just released your 7th studio album, Beneath the Eyrie. So where does the writing process begin for starting to work on something like Beneath the Eyrie? Is it different every time you start a new album?
Well, I suppose we tend to work around deadlines. So usually when the manager or somebody like that says, maybe this is the year that you guys would get together and do another record or whatever,
Yeah.
And then that's usually what starts the ball in motion,
Cool. I wanted to ask you about the album cover of Beneath the Eyrie. So for me, it seems to be some kind of tentacle object. I'm not entirely sure. What does it symbolize to each of you? How does it represent the record upon a first glance?
I think Paz should take this because Paz was pretty on top of this process of getting this image, how we got there.
Well, originally it was something else, and it was based around Catfish Kate, which is a song on the record, and it was a little bit too literal, and I feel that when it was a photograph of basically it's a mushroom, it had the feeling without it being literal, and I find it to be masculine as well as feminine in the photo, and represents the album, I think, pretty well.
Yeah, because it's the same on the inside of the album as well, isn't it? The kind of imagery that's all there. It's very similar.
Yeah, I counted the stems there. It's 8 of them.
Yeah.
It's an octopus.
It's cool. Okay, well, it's good to know. It's a mushroom. I wanted to ask Black Francis a question about songwriting. Has writer's block ever been an issue for you, or is that something that you've never really had to deal with? Because Pixies are obviously insanely prolific.
Not coming up with musical shapes is always kind of fun, but I suppose trying to come up with the libretto or whatever seems a little. I can't do it. There's nothing. What do I do? What do I say? And that seems hard to me sometimes. But once you break through and start, I guess it usually happens. And it's fun once you get. It's a lot of word games and things like that.
For sure.
And associations and playing around with language. And so once you kind of get into that, I don't know, I'm never in that mindset until I'm in that mindset. So I wish I was one of those people that was just sitting around making little notes and doodles and everything at the coffee shop, but I'm not.
So
I have to kind of have the deadline or the purpose, the goal or whatever.
So you're a deadline-oriented kind of band as opposed to, hey, we just got this really cool idea for a song, let's work away at it.
That's right. That's exactly it, yeah.
Cool.
From the beginning, yeah.
Yeah. I have a question for Paz now. So you are the only classically trained member of Pixies, is that correct? Yeah? So I wanted to know, because this is something that kind of concerns me as well, what do you think this aspect of your musicianship has brought to your contributions in the band?
That's a good question. I mean, I think being classically based was mainly why I wanted to do something else besides classical. Mm-hmm. Why I'm even a bass player is because it was the thing that I didn't have someone tell me how to do it, didn't have a teacher, didn't just use my ear and my, my person into music versus the trained side, which I fundamentally have, and I'm really happy I do, but pretty much tossed that out the window and just dealt with my intuition. And but yeah, I'm really glad I had the study, but I'm also glad I could throw it away and just be myself through knowing that your instincts come from that, but you can also just put all of that away too.
For sure, because like so much of classical music is very rote learning kind of. It's just sitting, playing the same thing over and over, isn't it?
I don't know if you play the same thing over and over, but like anything, it is a study. And I think there's a point in your study where it's okay, to put it away.
Cool, thank you. This next question is for Joey. It's a bit of a long one, so I'm sorry. So in the podcast that Pixies recorded with Tony Fletcher leading up to the release of Beneath the Eyrie, you kind of talk a little bit about your own struggles with coming up with guitar parts for songs and how it stems from the pressure you put on yourself to get it right.
Well, yeah, I think it's more like performance anxiety I get in the studio. That's what that's the thing,
So
I'm just used to, I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, how do you deal with that kind of pressure or anxiety that kind of comes upon having to come up with a perfect part for a song?
It's not that. It really is. It's the performance that I get the anxiety of, But the parts and stuff was, the visual part of it. I don't know if I told you guys this, but it's I met this person at orientation for UMass, and he was going after his fourth PhD, and we were going through orientation, and then I met him somewhere, and I showed him a little bit of chord progression. He goes, you should hit this note, and he just charted it just by a picture. And I go, wow, that's cool. And I went back and tried it, and it's like, that's none of it.
Yeah.
And I could always resort to that.
So the visual element of it.
And sometimes I do go into the studio. I think back then, like Bossa Nova, there was a song. What was it called? About a train wreck. Was it a train wreck? Yeah. You were like, train wreck.
Morris, all over the world?
All over the world. I went in there and I knew, I just wrote it on like a piece of paper, my little notes, and I went in there and I don't even have to hear this. I went in there and just did it. It just came out.
Yeah.
Like that.
So you have.
I knew it was gonna work, and and kind of like, I know this is gonna work, because I didn't have a guitar on.
Yeah.
That's why, so I went in there and just did it.
You have one of those ideas that just kind of works immediately.
Well, the shape is, I knew it had to go up.
Yeah.
And then go down and go up.
Right, so the general phrase is there. Yeah. Cool. This next question is for David. So on Pixies' randomization of your set list each night, I have a quote from you saying that the best is when you can sense what the next song should be based on the atmosphere in the room. So can you talk a little bit about how that set list kind of evolves continually throughout the night? How does that come about?
Well, I guess it's kind of trial and error, and haphazardly, and everything combined. It's just fun to do. But Charles usually, he's calling it. And, it all depends. We probably know what the first song is, and then everything else after that. It's a crapshoot in a way. What's
cool?
Because it's always different. It's going to be different every show, and they work. It can work. Charles can call it as far as the atmosphere, or slow and to fast, and different dynamics and things like that. Or we have songs that may go together. If we're on a fast thing, a tangent, it might go off in that way. But one thing I can say is there's never a show that's the same. It's just, maybe there might be odds that maybe one might fall someday, but no, they're all different. And it works on most parts always. It's cool.
I think that's something that's very cool because you don't really get a lot of other bands doing that these days where it's just spur of the moment, what song you should do.
Yeah, it's funny because I think we have, 80 or 90 songs? some,
I think I read it was 90 somewhere,
and of which we could probably do
just
50,
like that.
60. So it's picking from those and everything like that. And they're all, again, different time when it's all juggling and getting it under the wire.
Yeah, very impressive anyway. So just a general question to all of you. Which do you prefer, recording in studio or playing live, and why?
Hey, I think one thing is good because of the other thing being so good. I think if it was just one, favorite, then I don't know. Like I need both things for sure in order to be entertained by music.
I like being in the studio part, the recording part of it, a little bit more. I'm not sure why, but I think I like the isolation of it, and I like sort of there not being a clock, so sometimes you might stay up late or whatever,
Yeah.
But it feels. I think it's the isolation from the outside world that I really like that aspect of it.
You probably also have a lot more control over everything that happens in a studio as opposed to everything that happens on stage maybe as well.
I suppose in theory, but because it is an environment of control, like here in this room right now, we're controlling this conversation and you're capturing it here on this microphone, and so it's a little bit like that. It's like we have rooms and microphones and things to document sound, right? But so there is an aspect of control, but we don't really have a lot of artistic vision. We're a little bit, Joey and I are both born in the year of the snake, and so I think that we have a tendency to kind of just be in the moment and not really look too far down the road or too far behind us, and so there's a lot of spontaneity and not a lot of analysis.
Cool.
Like Paz said, you can't do one without the other, so I enjoy both of them. I particularly forgot one option, which is between tours. I like that too. Being home.
Chilling out.
But I love doing this, like it's an escape. Going live, playing out is pretty much putting your problems on hold.
Yeah.
But now with the family, it's not so, it is actually, it still is, it is. It's putting stuff on hold. It's like, you're in a different time zone, sorry, you're on your own, that kind of stuff. And recordings, they know to leave me alone on recordings,
Yeah.
I'm divided. They both have their attributes, both of them.
Pros and cons.
And I can equate it to, we were doing our own shows or a festival show. 'Cause when you're doing your own shows, oh, it's great, it's fantastic. But you'd like to do a festival. When you're doing a festival, I want to do our own show. So it goes back and forth. But they're both equal. It's hard to say.
Cool, thank you. So this kind of goes back to what Joey was just saying about music being an escape. So is the music of Pixies shaped by events that are happening in the world while you're writing, or is the music serve as an escape from real life itself?
Well, certainly we don't set out to demarcate where we are so much in time and space. We would rather be above that. So I can't say that we would ever seek to comment on what is going on in our life in terms of it being something that you could date, But certainly it might reflect more emotional, psychological aspects of your life or whatever. But it doesn't seem like that's our thing to kind of make a statement to anybody about hey, we got something to say about everything that's going on, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't feel like that's
Your thing.
what I should be doing.
Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. So Beneath the Eyrie is the second album that you produced with Tom Dougherty. So did you guys ever run into any kind of creative conflicts between what, say, the producer wants and what the band wants?
No, that's his job. Bequeath it to him, so
Yeah.
he knows what's best.
It's the, obviously, like, after you guys had Carrier with them a couple years ago as well, so he kind of knows you guys quite well now, I'd say.
Yeah, he's a fan, and plus, a good producer has tact, being a good ambassador who can, well, you know, rally everyone in and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Tom's good at that, as well as his production and engineering. He's well versed.
Do you all have a favorite show that you've played together, or is every show just the same, like amazing or bad or good or?
I think that there's this show, it's in Brussels called,
Oh, yeah.
what's it called? Is it called the National? And it's like an old arena, not a particular big arena, so it's probably built in the late 60s maybe. So performance is all about, not all about it, but you know, a big part of it is architecture, right? You know, it's like if there was only 3 of us singing in this room right now, we would be overwhelmed by the architecture. But now, we're all in this room and the architecture doesn't seem too big. It still feels kind of grand in here with these
Yeah.
big windows and the high ceiling and everything and these paintings. But the room is full, you know? And so there's something about that space. When it was full, happened to be full when we played there about 5 or 6 years ago. And, you know, because it wasn't like grand architecture, it was still kind of a lot of rivets and bolts and things like that and concrete, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there was something about having loud, you know, rock music in it and then full of people. It kind of rattled, you know, and it wasn't like a particularly clean place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was dust, you know, and, you know, it's a little bit grimy, and so just being in that kind of industrial, and then with all the people, it was sweaty also, even though there was, I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 people in this space. And it was, anyway, it rattled the most that it ever has rattled whenever we've performed. We all were, even from the stage, we're kind of looking at each other like, this place is really rattling, you know? And, it was exciting, and I've never forgotten it, yeah.
My ears actually rang at that show. From turning, exiting, and the crowd, I just got the perfect crescendo when they were the loudest. And it just shot in my ear. And my ears just rang for a couple of days from that. It was, yeah, I felt like suing them. $6,000 $1 each.
So who were some of your own musical heroes growing up, and what influences did they all have on your relationship with music?
The influences?
I mean, I guess the Beatles might have been my first, like, what?
For sure.
This? And, yeah, Paul being kind of the ambassador of my, you know, my steps in the beginning.
Joey and I also, that's like the first rock band that made it to like all the little kids, like in about 1970 or 71 or whatever, even though they had already broken up. That was the, if you lived, Joey lived in the Philippines, I lived, I don't know, wherever I lived at the time in the United States. And, you know, even if you weren't old enough to go to a record shop to buy a record or whatever, you know, maybe you would have seen, what's one of the cartoon movies that they put out, like
Yellow Submarine.
Yellow Submarine or something like that. You would have got a whiff of the Beatles, So I think that for a lot of people that were growing up in the early 70s, that was the band that you really heard, in different places, and so they subsequently became very important to me and to Paz, and I know to Joey. It's all kind of stems from that, Not that they're the only band that we
For sure.
look up to or whatever, but that's the one,
Yeah, when I discovered them, it's got the records. These guys got a lot of good songs. It's like blowing my mind. It's like I got spoiled. It's like they're the best band in the world by far. So many good songs.
What about
It's
yourself?
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that discovery. I'm jealous of people that are just going to discover. Well, my kids are going to discover them, and they're going to get blown away. It's going to be great for them.
Thank you.
Well, I love the Beatles, but this isn't really funny, but there's a Canadian three-piece called Rush. And I love the musicianship, the drummer especially. And if you listen to it, because I think it was at the same time, trying to emulate all his stuff. But Come On Pilgrim, the first thing, is pretty busy in drums. Only because of that. But after a while, it's like, oh, I can't do all this. So it calmed down after that.
Thank you. This next question's for Black Francis again. So in an old interview that I was watching, trying to get ready for this one, I found one from 1989, and you were talking about how a Pixies song comes together and described it as like a big experiment. Has that changed over the years that you've been writing?
Sorry, back up, what was it?
1989.
Right?
Yeah.
But sorry, what did I say? What was the...
You described songwriting as a big experiment.
Oh. Yeah, I guess so. It's with it has parameters, of course. It's got to have a backbeat. That's the form, right? The form is drums, bass, and guitars, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that probably is rooted in jazz combos of the 1920s and probably the 30s, especially where the percussion moved from being an ensemble of drummers and percussion players to one person sitting behind the stationary trap, right? And then it's a combination of that, and that's one parameter. So that, and then you got bass, or at that time piano, and then later was saxophone was prominent. But basically, it's all kind of settled now into bass, guitars, and drums. That's the general arrangement, right? And then I'm not a musicologist, but with piano rolls, sheet music before that, and then you start to get into those player pianos with the piano rolls. That shrunk down musical arrangements down to a more finite amount of time. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you could just keep playing it all day long. It was like, this is the experience is it's a beginning and a middle and end, and it's gonna be 3 minutes long or whatever, And so that, I think, is a big part of the architecture of popular music or whatever. It's the combination of that combo arrangement with the short arrangement. Of course, people Dylan put out Like a Rolling Stone at 6 minutes long. Oh my God! But the reason why there's the reaction is because it's so strong, that parameter, and even though there are exceptions to that rule, it always everything kind of gravitates back to that kind of form, And that's the general parameter that we're playing around with, I guess, as rock musicians or whatever. And and there's no rules, which is kind of nice. So there is that element of it being a real artistic endeavor or whatever, because there's no rule. there's there are formulaics, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and those are nice and comforting too.
Yeah.
You know, but even the formulaics are meant to be broken, because as soon as you get too comfortable with the formulaic, then it becomes dull, and then someone comes along and breaks the formula, and everyone says, "Ooh, they've broken free," you know. But anyway, I'm not really going anywhere with this, obviously. But I'm trying to get back to your question about, is it experimentation, whatever. It feels like it is, but it's an experiment with. It's not a completely in a vast vacuum of space or whatever. There's these
12 notes,
12 notes. Thank you.
verse, chorus, bridge, maybe instrumental part, and then you kind of like experiment with that.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Should we open up to questions on the floor?
Yeah, that sounds good. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of builds off the last question, which is just something I noticed about you guys is that you avoid classic tendency to kind of mystify the writing process or talk, like self-mythologize a bit about your like ground vision and design. And I was wondering, do you think that other people do that and you don't? And if so, do you think that affects your process or who you are as people?
Well, it would be so nice if we could remain mysterious in what we do, but there's this publicity aspect of what we do, which we accept, and we don't really have a problem with it as such. And I think that you have to be a good liar if you're going to like lie about your process. You know what I mean? And I'm just not very good at that. And so we've always been a little bit straight up when people ask us questions, especially in an interview context. We don't really have like how can we fool them, because it doesn't feel like we could pull that off. I don't think I could pull it off. I don't know about, it seems like the interviews I've read with these three, that they don't tend to do that either, you know. So I think we're pretty honest, only because I don't know, it just seems like, am I really going to waste your time and my time trying to, actually, have you go, I don't think he's telling the truth. It's just, so anyway, we'll just tell you, we're not like magicians demystifying our craft or whatever. We're musicians, so it doesn't seem like there's any damage by demystifying. I don't know if that answers your question.
I was wondering if for modern musicians, the record label itself has kind of become a foregone conclusion, because you can make your own stuff. You write it, you put it out. If it's popular, it is. If it isn't, it isn't. Do you think there's anything to be gained for a young musician now to join a record label, or should it just try and go along?
Well, I think that I'll just quickly, in case someone else has a thought, but I would say, and I'm sure that my colleagues would agree, that like the most important thing for, it seems like any kind of musician really is to perform in front of people, and that's the most important thing. And I don't know why that is, but it seems like it isn't really legitimate until that happens, and it just seems like an important part of being born into that arena or whatever, and I guess because it's an ancient thing, right? It's getting up in front of people and telling your story, or doing your dance, showing your picture, whatever it is you're going to do. That's a really old thing, and so if you're just kind of doing it in your room, and, I don't know, putting it on the internet, or only about making records, whatever, I know that there are artists that have only made records and they refuse to perform live, so I don't mean to suggest that it has to go a certain way, but it seems like if you don't, but for most people, if you don't do that, then it doesn't ever really, it doesn't really ever bear fruit the way you want it to, Do you agree with me, you guys? That you gotta play live?
Well, you do have to play it. I mean, have to.
Well, if you want to start a
it'll test to see
band.
if you actually like doing it, I mean, if you're willing to go through the whole experience of doing it, I mean, I mean, not to sound corny, but are you willing to do it for what? To pay your dues, you know? That's it.
Light blue sweater, yeah.
I was just thinking, the way that people listen to music in the last 30 years has changed so much. It used to be records, then it was CDs, then, I don't know, before CDs, tapes, and now Spotify, and streaming. How has that changed the way people kind of feedback to your music? Because there's less like an attention to the albums as a whole, maybe just songs on their own. Have you noticed there's been a change?
Definitely that an album meant a lot more to me growing up, hearing it from beginning to end, having to get up, flip the record, you know, listen to the other side, how one side sometimes gets listened to more than the other side, how I know the order. You know, there's some records where I already know what the next song is because I just like memorize not just one song, but the whole record. And I was brought up that way, and yeah, so I'm curious how people think of records now, you know, more than what I think of people, you know, like being different. Just it's just a different way of listening to a song, I guess. It's not knowing what it came after and what's going after it. It's just by itself, you know.
And that's all, because everything's immediate nowadays, you know, so you get one song and that's it, rather than a whole thing. That's what it seems to be the commonplace thing now. But at least we see one person who knows the words of one song, but usually our fans know all the words. That's what's good.
But streaming though is like, I mean, that's how I listen to music now, but it drives me nuts because like my kids will be listening to some really good piece of music and they'll just stop the music to ask what time it is. They'll say, hey, what time is it to the speaker? And I'll be like, no! You know, they'll be like, what time is it? Okay, the bus doesn't come for 15 minutes. I'm good. And I'm just like, but you know, we were like really grooving there, you know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, whatever. You know? So it is, yeah, it's different now.
The experience with an album is really, really good. You know, I mean, there's an argument whether it sounds good, better, or not. The thing is, the whole ritual is so rewarding. You know, I have one chair dedicated to just to listening to it. The speakers are perfectly there. The twitters are hitting my ears, and you know, you put it on. It's manual, so you go like that. And I have it set so that, you know, I put the thing down. By the time it touches a needle, I'm on my seat. You know, and you're just you got to pay attention, unless you want that record thing to keep going forever. You know, but it's a good experience. You know,
For sure. Ethan?
So you talked about the importance of song order on your albums for you guys growing up. Is that something that's very important to you when you're bringing out an album? Is there something you try to convey through that, or does it just come naturally?
We definitely gave, I mean, the producer, Tom Dalgety, it was kind of, we're on the same page that matters to us. There is a point on the record, even though it's not necessarily in record form, that it's obvious where you're supposed to flip it. And then it becomes this other record on the B-side. And it was intended to be listened to on a record, for sure.
Yeah, in the red jumper.
You signed your first record deal in London with 4AD, was it? And yeah, you weren't really accepted in the US initially. Why do you think that was? Was there like a market difference in the music scenes in Britain and USA, or do you think it suited that scene better?
Well, my theory is that, like, you know, certain forms of popular music, like rock music and jazz and even blues, because they're more or less pigeonholed by all of us as, you know, maybe coming from a particular time period, a particular location, you know, so a lot of these are American forms of music, right? Of course, quickly redefined by other people in other places, but I think that, you know, like over here, especially with like jazz music or whatever, you know, traditionally has been kind of up more on a pedestal, you know, than say in the States, where the States were just like, yeah, whatever, it's everywhere. It's rock music, it's jazz music or whatever, and I don't know, maybe we kind of take it for granted a little bit. Doesn't quite have the cultural importance of it. It's like over in Europe, it's like, oh yeah, this is the so-and-sos, and they do this kind of thing, and they're from this place, and this is how their particular strain was formed or whatever, you know, and there's a kind of a respectful understanding of the context or whatever, you know. But I think in the States we're a little more like, we're just a little more flippant about the whole thing, so I don't think it's revered so much, you know. I think we like it, but I think over here it's a little more revered. That's my theory. I don't know if I'm right.
My theory is you have better taste.
We're not England though, just
Overseas.
no, yeah, I'm just kidding.
Not America.
There.
Hi, I'm from Liverpool, so I let the views reference. But are there any sort of modern day up and coming artists that you've seen or heard that you really think should be aware of?
Really here, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
New bands.
Oh, new bands.
music.
Oh, yeah, there's always new music. It's just great. I go see bands all the time. I try not to be judgmental at all. I just like listening to what people are doing all the time. I'm not one to be like, oh, I recommend this or that, you know. I just go and watch shows because I like to see what people are doing, and without judgment. It's just more of being aware.
Yeah, what did you?
How did you find your feeling towards performing change over time? Did you feel that there was a novelty sort of at the beginning and that might have worn off, or like at the stage, or like how did that change over time, your feeling towards performing? So, or like as adults now, with like more responsibilities and some with children, did that change your feeling towards performing?
Well, our old manager years ago, he had this theory that, you know, like rock musicians, they learn how to play a bit and then they started to perform, but that there were kind of two types, you know, and there was the type of rock musician that really learned, once they learned how to play, they would master this other thing, performance, right? In front of an audience where you kind of like, I don't know, put on affectations or whatever, you know, you kind of emote to the back of the room. And, you know, that was one type of band. Then the other type of band, they were the bands that were just kind of like stuck in their playing part and didn't really concern themselves so much with all of that. Hello, everybody, you know. And they just stuck to, I think maybe they developed their playing, but they never totally embraced the performing aspect of it. And I feel like that this band, we're kind of that kind of band. Not that we're consciously trying to ignore the audience or anything like that, but we're definitely more about playing our music as opposed to like our choreography. And so that feels natural to me. And so I guess, to answer your question, I feel like my relationship to playing or whatever is exactly the same as it always has been, you know, since the very beginning. Feels that way. I don't think, I mean, you know, we have some moments now that we, you know, we try to, you know, whatever.
I've given up trying to perform. Last night I was just white knuckling. The room was. I was present the whole time. That's the good thing about playing live is you're present.
But being present doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good. This present, I mean, is there a receipt? Can I think someone, I don't like this present at all. But it was, whoa, the room's really booming. I can't hear stuff. And I'm there, and it's like, yeah, it's crappy. And I'm messing up. Look at me, I'm messing up. But you just don't judge the whole thing anymore. That's the thing. I was actually fine with it. I was like, usually I would be beating myself up the whole time, but I was actually fine with it. And of course, my head goes like, you don't care anymore, do you? But it's like, it's easier not, but it's you learn every time you play live. But as far as you said family thing?
I feel maybe at the beginning you might have been partying a bit more, but now you've got kids and stuff.
Yeah. They know where their shoes come from.
I think we have time for a few more. Down the back.
I was just wondering about any artist that garners a following. There's a sort of a stalemate between fulfilling the fans' expectations and kind of making the music that you want to make. And obviously, when you're making a record, some songs don't make the cut. So do you feel like you kind of make more songs get cut for one reason over the other? Because every record of yours, they're all different, but they all sound like Pixies, essentially. So I was just thinking, is that something you keep in mind, what the fans would like, or is it kind of more do you trust your own gut instinct that the fans will like what you like, essentially?
I think we might perk up a little bit when we have a song that's on the table and we might go oh, they're probably gonna like this one, huh? You know what I mean? But that's as far as it goes. It's really about entertaining ourselves or whatever, and that seems to be what we do, as opposed to trying to second guess what people are gonna like, or is this the right thing or the wrong thing? We say, is this the right thing or the wrong thing, but not out of deference to the audience. It's more about deference to the whatever, making music, right? Or deference to the Beatles, right? What would the Beatles do?
I'm still shocked people like Monkey Gone Hammock. I really am. I was like, it's a big deal. I'm not even, I just, every night, it's like, what the fuck?
I really like this one quote Salvador Dali said is, don't worry about being modern, just do what you do, and then,
Don't worry about the monkey.
Yeah.
Because your lyrics are so obscure and everything, a lot of people would have different meanings assigned to them and everything. Do you feel like your songs have a meaning and that's the meaning, or are you pretty good with everyone just got to decide what it means themselves?
Depends on the song, but it's nice when you have an open-ended lyric that people can have multiple interpretations of whatever, but sometimes you get stuck on a thing and you really feel like you have to, it's like I have to finish this puzzle, I gotta tell this particular cryptic tale or something like that, but other times you're more relaxed and it's more open to psychological analysis, and if you can just kind of just put things there, and then people can, and then sometimes I don't even know what songs mean really until if they have a meaning until after, it's just sort of like like I said, I think about it a lot in terms of psychoanalysis, you know what I mean? So if you can kind of be in that space where if you go to psychoanalysis, you know what I mean, you can try to control what you say to the analyst, but ultimately they're just going to go whoa, that you think you're on to something really cool, but they're like, that little thing you said a minute ago, that other little thing over there, what's that all about? And you're like, what, that little thing, And then it kind of I see what you're saying, So anyway.
I'm dead again.
So anyway, I like to try to keep songs in that kind of a space so that you as the armchair analyst can kind of go, wait a minute, I think I know what you're onto over here, you know. And I can do the same thing in hindsight. I can kind of go, oh, wait a minute, I see what you're going for over here, you know. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah.
I found you guys because you're on the 4ID label back in the beginning. And I remember always being curious as to how a band in Boston got their start on an English indie label rather than with somebody else. Just how did that work out really?
We did a gig with another 480 band, Throwing Muses, years ago. Throwing Muses is a 480 band years ago. They're from New England. And they're from New England, Rhode Island, we were in Massachusetts. And I think we're doing a gig in Boston, and I think their manager came to see. He liked us, and because of that connection with them being on 480, he said he gave them our demo tape to Ivo to wrestle at 480. And I think after a while he liked the tape, and that's how it all just came together.
I think we've got time for one more, so yeah. Yeah, you. Yeah.
What's your favorite tour story?
Tour story. Us?
First I thought you said Toy Story.
Definitely the first one.
So, I mean, the tour is the story. There's not one like moment. It's like saying what part of that painting is your favorite part, and you're like, well, if you stand back a little bit further, you like see the whole thing, and it's kind of that's the story. That's the tour story, you know. But if you're like too close to it, it's like, I don't know. It's like looks like a nice light blue, you know.
Where was that show where we couldn't get
Thanks.
to our
Thanks for helping me there.
Sorry. I wasn't in the present time. I'm sorry, Paz. What were you saying?
No, exactly. I wasn't saying anything. You have to like pull it out of me.
No, there was like, we had a welder and we couldn't get into our dressing room.
No, that was the
We were like stuck outside. Our door was locked.
No, it wasn't the Roundhouse. It was like in Austria.
It was in Germany.
Germany, yeah. Anyway.
Where's Simon? I think that's a question for Simon.
We do a lot of hanging around in hotel rooms and dressing rooms and airports and stuff like that. So when you what's your favorite stories? I don't know. It's like we really have to like dig deep. It's kind of hard to come up with something because it's just a lot of waiting around and traveling and you know, trying to keep your laundry together.
Yeah.
Laundry's a big important thing.
His sock got stuck in my like luggage somehow. And
Oh, what happened? I saw a sock on my bunk.
that's tour story.
See that?
The sock this week? I saw that sock.
You did?
It
In the bus?
it ended up in my bag.
Sometimes it's a mystery sock around. And no one wants to like
Claim it.
and sometimes you realize, oh, it's my sock actually. That happened this week. There was a sock.
Who claimed
Saw it
it?
over there, I saw it down there.
I knew it was his
gone
sock.
now.
It was striped. I mean, he wears striped socks.
Stripes.
So I don't wear socks. So you kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a Scooby-Doo moment.
Okay, we'll take one more question if anyone has one. Okay, yeah.
How do interviews and speaking with crowds like this, like what is it like for you, and do you see your music in a different light or as a result of what people ask you and what people think?
I think I understand your question. I'm trying to think of what the right answer is. So, but yeah, I think probably you do get an idea that, oh, that's what they think. It's nice anyway to kind of get to see people ask you questions. that, you know, because that seems like it's a kind of it's a different kind of a validation than we would normally get. You know what I mean? Like we play our song and people clap. That's what we're kind of used to. You know what I mean? So to just be in a room and to be asked questions just cause, you know, that's it's nice. You know, so it feels good. But I don't know that I see it differently or anything. But it feels good to be, you know, to be wanted.
Okay, you guys have been fantastic. Can we get another round of applause for Pixies?